name's Kevin. It's good to see you. Happy New Year to those I haven't seen. I'm actually curious about something. How many of you like doing New Year's resolutions? Let's see hands up. Okay, I'm one of them, so maybe I'm the only one. I kind of like it. Anyone brave enough to admit that? Okay, who doesn't like it? I can kind of guess, right? A lot of you don't like it. I still love you. You know, New Year's resolutions, the reason I like them is because it always feels like a time to create space for myself to reframe and rethink things and start a journey. And I get kind of excited by that idea of just taking stock, and I suppose it could happen February 1st. Doesn't really matter when you do it, but that's what I like about New Year's. You know, there's a saying that every journey starts by stepping out the door. And I know it's a cliche, but I wonder, sometimes the journey isn't the hard part. Sometimes the first step is the hard part. You know, as I've been thinking about this idea of stepping out the door, one of the things I've been thinking about is all of these habits that people try to start with New Year's or not, or resolutions, when they want to start something new. It's really interesting, you know, how habits form. One of the most difficult things to do when you're starting a new habit is to step out the door. So if you want to start going to the gym, it's not the workout that's hard, it's getting there that's hard. We've all heard that, right? If you plan to go to the gym for 1 minute, can you set that goal? 1 minute at the gym? And you get there, I guarantee you'll do more than 1 minute if you step out the door. Stepping out the door is the most difficult thing to do. And it leads to unexpected journeys. I mean, sometimes I step out the door and I end up driving somewhere. I don't know how I got there. Does that ever happen to you? I'm driving somewhere and I end up at my office here. Like, what am I doing here? I stepped out the door. It took me somewhere unexpected. Actually, there's someone famous, a famous thinker that I want to introduce to you that talks about these unexpected journeys. This is Bilbo Baggins. It's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out your door. You step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. That happens to me. And stepping out the door is the start of incredible adventures or not, but we never know where we're going to go. Today we're going to be talking about some men, some strange men who stepped out the door and I think ended up somewhere that they may not have anticipated. And I hope that we can journey with these men today and maybe take a step with them, and maybe it'll lead us somewhere exciting. Today is actually the first Sunday after Epiphany. Epiphany was Thursday, and if you're not familiar with Epiphany, it's actually a season of Christian feasting where we think about and celebrate the revealing of Jesus' divinity, of who he is, that he was the God incarnate. And it starts with the wise men visiting Jesus, and this is a traditional Epiphany thing. Epiphany is also an interesting word. Sometimes I get epiphanies. You ever get epiphanies when you don't understand something? Well, more often than not, I just keep not understanding. But sometimes I get an epiphany, and all of a sudden, I understand, and I don't really know how I got there. That's an epiphany, and I like them. I wish I could have more. I don't have many epiphanies. So we're starting this Epiphany series, and it's a series through looking at the question, how do we know? How do we understand? How do we know things? How do we arrive at our faith, and where does it take us? Where does this journey take us? And I want to share that I think this is a really important question, because I think a lot of us get discouraged about our faith journey based on false expectations of what faith is. And we go down this road and we think it's going to be something, and it turns out not being that way. I know that for me, my journey with faith started with me being very preoccupied with proving everything. And I was a person who really wanted to prove my faith, not just to myself, but to others, and that was very important to me. And you might say I used to be argumentative. Used to be. Not anymore. Things change when you step out that door. Some of you got that. Used to be argumentative. I hope I'm not argumentative, but anyway, maybe I'm a bit. But I was really interested in this idea of proving my faith to others and to myself. I just thought there's got to be a way to prove this beyond a doubt, with certainty. I feel like that journey can be a destructive journey, not only personally, but with other people that you're talking to. And I want to talk today about certainty. And I just want to say that nothing in life is certain except for death, taxes, and face masks. Certainty is one of these things that's difficult for us, and we all want certainty. But faith is more like a journey of stepping out that door. You take a step out that door, and you don't really know where it's going to lead. It unfolds. And my hope for you is that after this message today, well, this is maybe a lofty hope, but hey, we can dream. Maybe you'll have an epiphany. Maybe we'll have an epiphany about the nature of our faith and the journey, and you'll go out feeling encouraged about your faith and not discouraged. And I really hope this doesn't sound backwards to you, but I'm hoping to show that this is actually the way our Christian faith had been understood for centuries. And something switched, and we got into this idea of certainty. We're going to look at that. So these men who went on this journey, we call them the three kings, or the wise men, and they're very strange. I want to read to you the scripture. This is in Matthew chapter 2, verses 9 to 12. After they had heard the king, they went on their way. And the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Can you picture it? These men, we don't know if there were three, but these men who just don't really seem to fit in the story. They don't fit. They're different. Somehow they don't belong in this story. I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch this thing called Sesame Street. Anyone else watch Sesame Street? And there was this little game that I still remember that I liked, and it goes like this. 3 of these things belong together. 3 of these things are kind of the same. You know that game? Okay, so this is how it works. You got these 3 pictures, 3 of the same color and 1 that's different, and you got to try to figure out which one doesn't belong. And I'm thinking, okay, so we've got Mary, the blessed of all women. We've got Joseph, son of David. We've got Jesus, Savior of the universe, God incarnate. And we've got these magi from Babylon. Which one of these doesn't fit? Could you guys pick which one doesn't fit? Do you need me to sing the song again? The magi don't fit. And they stepped out in this journey, and something caused them to step out that door. And I'm really curious what caused them to step out that door and embark on this journey of faith. Because I bet they didn't understand, but they had faith. It's a really interesting thought, isn't it? That they didn't fully understand, but they had faith anyway. These magi are strange. There's a classic saying in Christianity that you may have heard that I want to remind you of or reintroduce you to. It goes like this. I believe, therefore I understand. Now, I think in our society, we like to switch that around and say, I will believe when I understand. But actually, this goes way back to St. Augustine, who was an ancient church father, a bishop, and also Anselm of Canterbury said this, something like this. I do not seek to understand in order that I may believe, but rather I believe in order that I may understand. It's a very important distinction. He came up with this little phrase that our faith journey is like this: faith seeking understanding, not understanding seeking faith. It's a crucial difference, and I think we get this backwards. As I look at that, I think, how can I become Kevin of Kelowna? I like this. Anselm of Canterbury, Augustine of Hippo, Sean of West Kelowna, Kevin of Kelowna. Anyway, I digress a little bit. The reason of faith is reasonable, but the process is important, that we don't get it backwards, that we don't think that we have to have certainty before we can have faith, because faith is a thing that we start with. There's another thinker, more recent. His name is Michael Polanyi, and this guy is what's called a polymath, which I didn't even know was a word until I started researching this guy. A polymath is a person who is a genius in multiple subjects. It happened to be chemistry, physics, philosophy, and social sciences. Kind of a cool thing. Kevin the polymath. No. The monomath. Not even. Anyway, Michael Polanyi was a polymath, and he was this guy that really started to look at science and faith. And he actually made this claim that we can't actually know anything without starting with faith. This guy wasn't actually anti-science or anti-reason. None of this is anti-reason. But he said that all scientific investigation actually doesn't start with pure knowledge. It starts with faith. So if you have an investigation that you want to do, you must have a faith position to ask any question. Actually, anytime you disagree with someone, you disagree from a perspective of a belief. Try to disagree without having a belief that you start from. It's actually impossible. You have to doubt something based on a belief in something. So all doubt is connected to faith. So this is kind of connected to this idea that I believe, therefore I understand. And this is where I want to go with this. This isn't anti-rational, this isn't anti-reason, but this is actually a corrective that I think we need to do, that our faith starts with faith and stepping out in that journey. So the wise men were men of faith, lacking understanding, who should have been turned away. They were men of faith that lacked understanding, who should have been turned away. I'm going to explain that to you. Because really they weren't wise men or three kings, they were magi. And magi is a term that we know in the Bible to mean something very different from that. If we looked at the book of Daniel, chapter 2, verses 1 to 2, these are the court magicians. These are the magi. They're sorcerers. They were the ones that Nebuchadnezzar asked to interpret the dreams. They're the ones that do all this stuff for the king, and they couldn't. And remember, Daniel interpreted the dreams because they couldn't. These are the magi. The word is also used in the New Testament. Later on in the book of Acts, there's a false prophet named Bar-Jesus. He's called a sorcerer. The word is magi. There's another one just a couple verses later, Elymas. He is also a magi, a false prophet, and a sorcerer. This is not complementary language in the Bible. Yet here we have these magi coming to visit Jesus and being the first ones to worship him. Like, this is really, really odd. They don't fit into the story. They don't belong. You know, the original readers of the New Testament, the very first people that heard this story, even the people that were there would have had problems with this. That the King of the Jews wasn't visited by Jews first, wasn't worshipped by Jews first, but was worshipped by pagan sorcerers first. They're the ones who turned to Jesus, and King Herod, the king of the Jews at the time, wanted to kill him. It's a very strange reversal. The original, actually all through Christian history, many Christian thinkers have had trouble with squaring this idea of these sorcerers coming to see Jesus. And they have said things like this. They came and their bowing was actually a symbolic act of surrender, that baby Jesus caused them to surrender to his side. Their forces of evil were conquered by this. Others say that they came and they surrendered. The gifts were actually them surrendering their instruments of sorcery and laying them down in defeat. And others say that this was actually a symbolic thing, that it was actually about reenacting Moses defeating the sorcerers in front of Pharaoh. So all of these things to kind of get rid of this problem of what are these people doing being the first ones to worship Jesus. It's an interesting problem of faith. And I think it's really remarkable that we have these people in Matthew with absolutely zero disapproval. No disapproval at all. These sorcerers come and worship Jesus, and there's no disapproval in the book of Matthew about this. They don't fit in the story. It's very puzzling. And I wonder, why Matthew would include these men, these magi, these sorcerers, in this very important narrative about who Jesus was. The other Gospels don't have this. Only Matthew does. And I want to tell you something about Matthew that I think makes it more interesting and compelling. Matthew was very interested in the idea of reversal. This idea that the meek shall inherit, the poor are, the broken are blessed. All these reversals that Matthew does in his gospel. And here we have another reversal. Matthew is also very, very focused on expanding the gospel message to non-Jews, to the outside world. And here we have these non-Jews, pagans, coming to worship Jesus. So it fits with what Matthew does. He reverses things and puts people in unexpected places. And here we have these magi worshiping Jesus. They don't belong, but they're included. The magi started their journey with faith. Whoops. Oh, I already did that. No, I didn't. The Magi, I need an epiphany right now about this thing. The Magi started their journey with faith, which led to understanding. Hey, I don't know what kind of message they got. Like, we don't know that part of the story, but what would have caused them in Babylon or somewhere in Persia to say, I'm going to go on a journey besides a star? Like, I think, and I'm guessing, but I think they had some kind of word from God, the Lord Almighty, visiting them, telling them what was going to happen. But yet, there's still no certainty there. It's like, was that a bad dream? Did I imagine that? It's like, what was this? So they got this word. Somehow, they received some message that they should step out and do this. But they had to step out the door and do this. And it was a big journey. Did you know that it was probably about 1,000 kilometers for them to go by camel? Talk about saddle sore. Man, that's one way. 1,000 kilometers one way. About 50 days as the camel walks. So a long ways to go to see baby Jesus. And I don't even know if they knew what they were going to find. So they step out the door. And then they get there and they have to evade Herod because he's a bad guy. They're wise enough to do that. I don't know if they know what they're going to find. Yet they get to the baby, to Jesus, and they worship him. They bow down and they worship him. And I think that was a moment of understanding. See, I think that their faith of stepping out the door took them to this moment where they actually understood what was going on. That faith led to understanding. And the word worship, I think I'm way ahead. Hold on here. Go the other way? Oh, thank you for helping me. Oh, yeah, right. Oh, that's the slide I was looking for. Okay, so here we are. Worship. It's really interesting what they did. This word is, when you look at it in Greek, it's actually a compound word, proskuneo, to bow down. And it actually is made up of two words, from pros, to fall towards, and kaneo, to kiss. So it's interesting because it can actually be used for kings as well, or for people that are higher than you in station. It's not necessarily a word that has to be worship. And as a matter of fact, if you look in different translations of the Bible, you'll see homage is one of the things that they paid homage to the baby Jesus. But this is what it means. I looked this up. What does it mean to pay homage to a king in this culture? And the closest I got, I'm looking to see how much room I have because I got to do something. The closest I got was to the Coptic Christians, who are one of the most ancient forms of Christianity. And this is what they do. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, so they do a sign of the cross, which I don't quite know how to do the way they do, and I don't want to disrespect it. So they're like this. They go down like this, and then like this. That's what that word proskuneo means. And it's this total act of subservience and humility, bowing down before someone. And I actually think, there's debate whether they actually worshiped or just paid homage. But I think the story of Matthew makes it clear that they actually worshiped because they were overjoyed when they saw this baby Jesus. There's something that happened in them that was more than just paying homage to a king. Their understanding came because of their faith. Imagine if they wanted certainty before they set out on this journey. Where would they be at if they had wanted that? They understood first, and then they set out. They understood after they set out. For those of you who are new, sometimes I get a runny nose when I preach. It's not COVID. It hasn't happened for a long time. I don't know what's different, but I'm kind of disturbed by it. Anyway, faith leads to understanding, not the other way around. And belief means stepping out the door. Sometimes it's the first step is the biggest step, just stepping out the door. And I just want to ask you, how much faith is enough before you step out that door? How much do you need? How much faith is enough? Because I think this is a profound story of faith, beginning with the wise men. But in Matthew, the story of faith ends with the ascension. I mean, there's something really remarkable that happens at the ascension as well in Matthew chapter 28, verses 16 to 17. Whoops, I missed that one. Then the 11 disciples left for Galilee, going to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. Isn't that strange? This is in the Great Commission. At the end of Matthew, after these disciples had seen Jesus raised from the dead, all the miracles that he did, all of these things, they traveled with him, they've done all these things, and he's in his glorified body, about to ascend into heaven, and they doubted. It's pretty strange. And when I put that together with what's happening at the beginning of Matthew with these magi that came to see Jesus, there's something interesting and challenging and inspiring and reassuring about the nature of faith and understanding for us today. I believe, therefore I understand. Belief begins by stepping out the door in faith. And I just wonder if you ever feel like those wise men, like the guys that don't quite fit in, that don't have enough faith. Or maybe you feel paralyzed, like you need more faith. You need certainty before you can do anything in your faith journey. Or discouraged because you don't feel like you have enough faith and you have doubts in your life. You have doubts about the faith. Who doesn't have doubts about their faith? Can we have a show of hands? I'm not really. That's rhetorical. Who doesn't have doubts about their faith? Just want to voice that. Because it's kind of a myth that we have this certainty about faith. It's not like that. Faith isn't certainty. Faith is stepping out despite the lack of certainty. Faith is stepping out, is take those actions of faith. And those actions of faith lead to greater understanding. And I can honestly say that in my faith journey, leaving certainty behind has made me more certain of my faith. Does that make sense? Welcoming this and being honest about it and stepping out in faith has made me more certain about my faith. And there's something that I think we need to realize about faith. It's this: it is by grace through faith you are saved. And we read this is actually Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 to 9. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves, it is a gift from God, not by works, but that so no one can boast. Grace is always previous to faith. And the danger of this idea of certainty is that we put faith previous to grace. Grace is always previous to faith, and God pours out his grace and gives us faith and allows us to step out. So if you feel not good enough, not smart enough, strange, you don't fit in, too sinful, just not quite up to snuff, the good news is the journey isn't about perfection and certainty. It's about stepping out. So I invite you to step out like those magi and know that God will pour out his grace on you. Faith leads to understanding. Understanding doesn't lead to faith. Let's respond in faith and in worship.